Hello, everybody. This is Real to Real Wake Up. And today's movie review is going to be What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams. I'm Dean Val here with Dean Kevin and Jeremy and Mr. Peter Smith. Okay, so first of all, what I do is just give you a literal review here from one of the synopsis here from the internet. And then we discuss further we make comments on what we see, how it relates to something even more real than just the literal entertainment part of each movie. This is a synopsis, one of the synopsis in a literal viewpoint. First, I'll share this, and then we'll give it over to Kevin, and he has a organized way for us to comment on the movie. While vacationing in Switzerland, physician Chris Nielsen, Robin Williams, meets artist Annie Collins, Annabella Sciorra. They are instantly attracted to each other and bond as if they had known each other for a long time. They marry and have two children, Ian, played by Josh Paddock, and Marie, played by Jessica Brooks Grant. Their idyllic life comes to an end when the children die in a car crash. Life becomes very difficult. Annie suffers a mental breakdown, and the strains on their marriage threaten to lead to divorce. But they manage to struggle through their losses. On the anniversary of the day they decided not to divorce, Chris is killed in a car accident. Unaware that he is dead and confused when nobody can interact with him, Chris lingers on Earth. He watches Annie's attempts to cope with the loss, and he attempts to communicate with her, despite advice from a spirit-like presence that will only cause her pain. When his attempts only leave her more distraught, he decides to move on. Chris awakens in heaven and finds that his immediate surroundings are controlled by his imagination. He meets a man, Cuba Gooding Jr., whom Chris seems to recognize as Albert, his friend and mentor from his medical residency, and the spirit-like presence from his time as a ghost on Earth. Albert will be his guide in this new life. Albert teaches Chris about his new existence in heaven and how to shape his little corner of it and to travel to others' dreams. They are surprised when a blue jacaranda tree appears unbidden in Chris's surroundings, matching a tree in a new painting by Annie, which was inspired by Annie's belief that she can communicate with Chris in the afterlife. Albert explains to Chris that this is a sign that the couple are truly soulmates. However, Annie is overcome with despair and decides that Chris cannot, in fact, see the painting and destroys the piece. Chris sees his version of the tree disintegrate before his eyes, which coincides with the painting being destroyed in the real world. Chris laments he will not see his wife and encounters an Asian woman with the name tag Leona, whom he comes to recognize as his daughter Marie, living in an area shaped like a diorama she loved in life. The two share a tearful reunion. Meanwhile, on Earth, Annie is unable to cope with the loss of her husband. She then decides to commit suicide. Chris, who is initially relieved that her suffering is over, quickly becomes angry when he learns that those who commit suicide are sent to hell. This is not the result of any judgment made against them, but that it is their nature to create nightmare afterlife worlds based on their pain. Chris is adamant that he will rescue Annie from hell, despite Albert's insistence that no one has ever succeeded in doing so. Albert agrees to find Chris a tracker who takes the form of Sigmund Freud to help find Annie's soul. And that's played by Max van Snowdow. In the journey to hell, Chris finds himself recalling his son, Ian, remembering how he'd called him the one man he'd want at his side to brave hell. Chris realizes Albert is Ian. Ian explains that he chose Albert's appearance because he knew that Chris would listen to Albert without reservation. Before they part ways, Ian begs Chris to remember how he saved his marriage following Ian and Marie's deaths. Chris then journeys onward with the tracker. After traversing a field containing the faces of the damned, they come to a dark and twisted replica of Chris and Annie's house. The tracker then reveals himself as the real Albert and warns Chris that if he stays with Annie for more than a few minutes, he may become permanently trapped in hell. All that Chris can reasonably expect is a chance to say a final farewell to Annie. Chris enters the house to find Annie suffering from amnesia, unable even to remember her suicide, and tortured by her decrepit surroundings. Unable to stir her memories, he gives up, but not the way the tracker hoped he would. He chooses to join Annie forever in hell. As he announces his intent to stay to Annie, his words parallel something he had said to her when he left her in an institution following their children's deaths, and she regains her memories even as Chris succumbing to her nightmare. Annie, wanting nothing more at that moment than to save Chris, ascends to heaven, bringing Chris with her. Chris and Anne are reunited with their children in heaven, whose original appearances are restored. Chris proposes reincarnation. So at that, he and Annie can experience life together all over again. The film ends with Chris and Annie meeting again as young children in a situation roughly parallel to their first meeting. Okay, this is kind of funny because it's almost like a marketing movie for reincarnation. You know how great it is to be reincarnated again. Although they say, although he gives us a hint that it's like, I'd rather spend life with you in hell than my own heaven, So these movies always have a little, you could say, little element of truth in it, but then they twist things around so that you're thought to see things a certain way, basically the way the controllers want you to see it. So it was a very fun movie, really interesting movie. It was well done. I'm anxious to see what everybody else sees from the movie. So I'll give it to you, Kevin.
Firstly, we see the relationship established between Chris and Annie, as they would seemingly by chance feature in each other's experience and have an instantaneous connection and recognition of each other. Undoubtedly a situation of emotional attachment, agreement between individuals that has them entwined in each other's cause and effect experience for lifetimes, unless such attachment taplining is decided as to its release. Emotional attachment always is the number one cause of remaining in lifetimes in simulated creation, and that which brings us back endlessly. And so, very likely, Chris and Annie have established this attachment previously in prior lifetimes, which will inevitably then effect continued experience which they share. It's all been mapped out and decided, and we simply walk into the experience continuously through how we have constructed our consciousness, through the agreements and attachments that make up its construction. Nothing then is by chance, coincidence, or accident. It's all by decided design. We are always the deciders of our experience and positions in life. The line in the movie where Chris asks Annie, how did she know he would be there? And she replied that she didn't. The experience already projected through the agreements and attachments. And so such scenarios will just take place accordingly, like a pre-programmed computer game with pre-programmed individuals that feature in them.
Yeah, I like that. It really, you really analyze the part about the cause and effect, because whatever you decide and therefore agree to, whether it be emotional attachments, tap lines, the ideas of others, you then are the effect of them. And so you have to experience them. That's just the nature of cause and effect. And that can send a person whirling through lifetimes, and some people they're okay with that. And initially, like Val said, that they kind of romanticize reincarnation, that like, oh, look, you could spend lifetimes on earth with this person. They played it as though it was some kind of epic love story. It transcended these things, but really it's just them sort of holding each other back from recognition.
Yeah, and then you mentioned that line, how did you know I was going to be here? Well, the whole movie was like, in a way, it was like intuitive. It was like intuitive moment to intuitive moment. Instead of a literal linear string of time, events in time, is like when the kid in the beginning of the movie, when the van was leaving with the kids, he said goodbye, and the kids looked out of the window. I mean, you could tell something was going to go. Even first time you watching it, you could tell something was going to go off of that. Just almost every scene had an intuitive element to it, like there was something more than what was going on. So it's kind of interesting how they put the movie together in time frames of not linear, but kind of experiences, and played off of that. So again, in that way, this movie was well done in terms of kind of showing how using your intuition too. It's a good thing, to see more. Does Peter have any comments there? Would he like to comment?
I've seen this film several times on television and a video we used to have, but we've now obtained a DVD of it, and I suddenly noticed on the box that there were some extras, and one of them was actually an alternative ending, which I thought might be interesting. So I haven't watched the whole film through. And first of all, I put on the alternative ending, and I'll give a brief synopsis of it. I found it much better than the familiar one with the two little kids meeting on the beach or wherever it was and sharing their sandwiches right at the end. In the alternative ending, Annie has to come back here because she committed suicide and has to face her responsibilities. I find that more plausible than them both volunteering to come back, who in their right mind would. Chris, played by Robin Williams, asks if he can go back and be with her again, even though we're told she will die young of an illness in the new life. Their son and daughter, now in their alternative adult forms, seem to be more aware than them, and the son advises them he felt that kindred spirits would want to do this, and thinks he has found a suitable candidate for Chris. Basically, Annie will be reborn in Sri Lanka and he in the USA, but go out there when when adult and find her. She will die in his arms eventually, and he will live for another 40 years, but then they will be together again, presumably in the astral. Chris decides this is a better option for some reason, and we next see their births in Sri Lanka and Philadelphia, and it ends there. I don't know why they discarded this ending, although perhaps they were felt the general population would find it a happier one, with the two little kiddies smiling at each other. It would be interesting to read the Richard Matheson story on which the film was based, if only to see how he ended it. One thing, though, earlier in the film we were rather given to understand that suicides are stuck in their personal hells forever, which is obviously patent nonsense, and doesn't sit with the more plausible alternative ending. It would only have required the removal of a couple of lines of dialogue to put it straight.
Well, that's interesting, the alternative endings. I mean, that's each time you come back, you can have a new lifetime and just replay it with a different tweak, a different scenario. And that's, we see a lot of movies like that where person travels back in time and then they try to rearrange events. And this can be going on and on for literally forever. So do you want to do this, or do you want to see more? There's also a quote, we can go back and be reborn, but only if we choose to. I mean, that's what they put out. So yeah, you have a choice, and most people do choose to come back. So they make it attractive, like I like what Jeremy said. Yeah, they romanticize the idea of reincarnation and coming back. They didn't really focus on the suffering, the pain, and the anguish that caused her, Annie, to go to commit suicide. They just focused on, basically you're led to think it's a good time. You're going to have a good time. But if that's what you want, there's always the cause and effect here in creation. And they're really talking again about the personal self here. The whole movie is about the personal self, the physical astral self. And they have no mention of anything beyond that. They just mention God once, I think. You see, he's up there someplace. Where do they say he controls things or something like that? But it's really just physical astral, the whole movie. And it's, well done in terms of kind of what happens in a way from my viewpoint. But there's so much more, but it's good for people to see this. I remember Dwayne, when he first saw it with his girlfriend, that movie ended and they're walking out of this is Mr. Kitty here, by the way. You want to see?
Wow, it almost looks like the kitty I got.
Yeah. Okay. When people were walking out of the theater, he listened to them. He said, well, that was a great movie. What was it about? They had no idea what it was about. So that's kind of why we're here, to kind of define things and to help people see through some of these things that we're faced with. Do you have any comments, Jeremy, on what Peter read there?
Well, it's like the alternate ending there. It seems a little more realistic in that she had to come back, because I remember I read that in one of Dwayne's books, that a person who commits suicide, was it the Lords of Karma or something else? They come and they greet them and they instantly take them back to a new body form, because when you do that, you're sort of running away from what it is that you're supposed to learn. So you instantly get reincarnated, because that's sort of the cause and effect with that situation. So the alternate ending being a more realistic of, okay, well, she had to come back,
Well, I guess that avoids the long lines. You have to wait for a body. You get one right away. It's one way to get around that. The long lines that are past Saturn or something we hear about to get to a body form. Yeah. We're going to do something like that. We're going to do some skits like that where yeah, the person he gets to the front of the line, and the only choices are like being born like a pygmy in Australia, or a bug in Kenya or something, or these only choices, body types. Well, this is what you got, you know. Okay, I'll be born a bug in Alabama or something, a roach or something. Go ahead, Kevin, if you want to go.
We see how, as the children transition, and as Chris does also, the demonstration of the clinging onto the idea that the personal vehicle represents. Individuals generally not recognizing each other as the beings of real awareness light, that are simply using the body vehicles to experience in creation, and so the emotional attachment is very much to the created personal self vehicle and the consciousness construction of it. The consciousness as much a vehicle for awareness as the body form itself. When the body form expires, the awareness that utilized it is simply onto their next position on their journey, according to what they have decided, and it makes no sense then to cling onto the idea of the consciousness of the personal self and the body forms, and to apply emotion to the situation, where really it is simply the individual moving on to their next position. It would make more sense to let them go, and not create additional, emotionally charged, cause and effect taplining ideas that further encumber us. And besides, no one goes anywhere in reality. Everything is here and now. It's only from the perception of the personal self that it seems that separation has taken place, as creation very much is designed that we don't have an all-awareness view, because we need these experiences and individualized events as comparisons to recognize the is by, and the dark forces create a big emphasis on funerals and ceremony, all wrapped up with religion, which, as all religions are reptilian created, based on sacrifice. And with the agreements trawled through such ceremonial religious send-offs, will be additional cause and effect taplines to overall reptilian controlling ideas that mire us in creation.
This body forms idea, it's interesting because how they disguise themselves in the real, in the heaven there. They had the daughter disguised herself as Leona, and the son disguised himself as Albert, and the tracker disguised himself as he was actually Albert, but you know, and that part I kind of wanted to see what you guys saw from this. When Robin Williams discovered that the tracker was his old friend Albert took off his glasses. And why would anybody need glasses in the heaven? I mean, he was wearing glasses all the time, but then he took them off when Robin Williams discovered he was Albert, and then he put him back on later on. So it may be that the glasses were, if you, on the real side, I don't know how you see this, Kevin. Sometimes they're representing the physical, world's glasses, because. But I wondered how you saw this thing, because who wears glasses in heaven? You don't need. You can do anything you want. So, how did you guys see that?
Well, the glasses could be representing his ability to perceive his situation, not even realizing who he was, but it being revealed to him is sort of like that aha moment type of thing. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah, and also being able to take on forms, different forms, as we know on the real side, you can do this. That should also, in a way, people don't in the movie, they didn't recognize what his kids recognized it, and Albert, but he never really recognized it and utilized it. He could have done something like that with Annie too. When he went to rescue her, he could have taken on another form, just as a sidelight, to make her kind of like what Albert did to him. I mean, his son did to him by taking on Albert's form. He could have taken on a form that maybe she would have responded to more, like one of her kids, maybe. I don't know. He could have done it different ways. But, since they were soulmates, so-called, then he tried that way with his real form. So it's all interesting. We can use creation to our benefit to enhance our awareness.
I also wanted to point out, Val, I know you like to look for the little things that you see in the movies, like the subliminals and stuff. One thing I noticed is when they went to, I think it was when they went to the church, if I remember correctly, and they were going through the whole ritual of the sort of reading over the coffin or whatever, that there was a checkered floor. They always do that. They always put the checkerboard or checker floor in there, the black and white sort of representing that dualistic current. And I thought that was interesting. If you had any other things that you noticed, or
as we go along, I probably will. Right now, I can't think of any. It's one thing, yeah. In the funeral, when he touched her face and tried to get her attention, yeah. And then later on, as the movie goes, you find out that it's just causing her more pain if she sticks around. So he decided to go on. And that's kind of the way it is you stick around too long, it's just not going to be good for anybody. You're holding everybody back, including yourself and the person. You need to go on, because everybody's on their own journey, basically. You need to see that it's being to being, and everybody's got their own path to live. So he could have done it again another way, but once he get used to being in that area, wherever he found himself in, which in the movie it says everybody has their own reality or their own heaven. They implied that. He could have come back in her dreams or done it different ways, to get her attention. Called upon the real guides to help him. Sometimes they use different like items that the person's used to like, get their attention in the physical. Anyway, there's different ways of doing this. So, I mean, he's a rookie in the experience, so you give him a chance.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in regards to the black and white tiles, the chessboard that you saw on the ground. That is actually a very common pattern that the dark forces and the controllers use in a lot of their secret societies and their Masonic temples and such. Because the black square actually represents the black cube, which represents the planet Saturn, and Saturn would then the worship of Saturn is actually the same as apparently the worship of Satan. And it's actually the same word, and it's just another subliminal programming mechanism. And And also with the glasses as well. I think Dwayne said that if you see people wearing glasses, but they're intact glasses, it tends to represent they have focus, but their focus is on the physical. Because obviously, as you were saying, Val, glasses or anything that you would wear as clothing, why would you need it on the real side beyond the physical level? But Dwayne also then went on to say that if you see people wearing glasses where the lenses are absent, that tends to represent they have focus, but their focus is not on the physical, and actually is actually with their real awareness. And because he spoke of when the seers were coming through, and he saw them as a group of individuals wearing very thick horn-rimmed glasses, but were actually lensless, which indicated to him that they were very, very much focused on their real awareness and as being seers. Yeah, it's like the as well the cross as well. If you the cross is actually a flattened out cube as well. It consists of I think a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares, and if you were to combine all the squares together, it would form a cube. So again, that shows how a lot of the religious Christian symbology is actually all involved in a lot of satanic practices that go back for thousands of years and originally stem from the worship of Saturn, which then was changed to be referred to as Satan, but it all is part and parcel of the same, basically, worship of the reptilians and the space gods. And then we see Chris transition, but rather clinging onto the physical life and position he has left behind. As such, Chris can still see the physical level is still lingering around his wife through the attachment he has with her. As like everything we experience, we decide what we will see and be, and his decision then is to remain perceptually viewing the physical level despite no longer having a physical level vehicle. As such, he hasn't fully transitioned his awareness to the astral, which is generally the next position for most. Consequently, he can't at that stage perceive anything of the astral. If he was to step fully into his next position, he no longer would have the view of the physical level, unless he so decided. As we all are this everything awareness view, and only are as limited as we decide to be. Although Albert, trying to get his attention, is able to feature in Chris's experiential view of the physical, like a kind of astral real side bleed over, though rather blurry, as very little of Chris's awareness focus is anywhere but the physical level still. It's possible that people can remain in such a state of having transitioned, but their focus and attention locked onto the physical to the extent that they can't perceive the next position they are standing in. Like ghosts, individuals who cling to their personal self-lives after transition, and for many, they would be confused as to where they are, as for them, from their perception, they hadn't left the physical. In reality, we are everywhere simultaneously through our awareness, and where we are positioned in a life after transition depends on what we have recognized. Most simply won't see beyond the astral level of themselves, as most people are physical, astral, focused predominantly. So in the astral, their awareness will reside, or in the case of some, not even the astral will they perceive. Some remain rather bewildered, even as they do move their awareness fully onto the astral. As in the line in the movie, "If I was dead, would I need you to tell me?" For some, Maybe they would need to be told this was the case, if they had never even considered reincarnation or positions beyond the physical life level. Life is always a preparation for the next position, but one-dimensional individuals will be completely unprepared, as they have decided to consider nothing beyond the surface physical level worlds. Generally then, they drift about on the astral in bewildered confusion, get bored, and then return to what they know, assuming another physical level body form and life, which is already mapped out for them according to their consciousness ideas, agreements, decisions, and choices, if they have clung on to these.
Yeah, that's what our educational system lacks, is the preparation for when we go on. What, and like some people just don't know that they're dead. So we're preparing. Basically, this is just a stopover here, and we're preparing just to move on to more, more awareness. But this is a big process, and people need to be educated really, to see how it all works out for how the process works. They also said here, thought is real, physical is illusion. So yeah, so they the thought part, that's one aspect of the astral, the thinking, the creating part. Oh yeah, what I was going to say is that how they also communicated. Annie she painted the tree. She's the artist, so she painted the jacaranda tree, that purple tree. He saw it on the real side, or the heavenly side there. So she tried to communicate through him to see, from my understanding, just to kind of get some kind of feedback to see if he was aware or alive still, or, and if he could. And he did, he saw it, but then she got frustrated that she didn't get any response from him, any feedback, so she just kind of gave up after that. But it was kind of a clever way of communicating that, trying to reach him through her painting, which he saw on the real side. And that's what I'm saying. What did he do? What did he do to try to communicate with her? Well, he tried touching her in the church. What else did he do? I can't remember exactly. But that we see this sometimes where, well, people can enter into others' dreams, which next week I thought we'd do Dreamscape, which is a very good example of how the elites enter people's dreams to try to control them or to do away with them. But there's different ways to communicate back and forth, but it's the awareness that counts, and it's always now. So these other things are just like references basically to that. But I think somewhere else too, they said that you'll always be together, something. I don't know, remember somebody said that? Was that in this movie? But there's an implication that you're always together anyway. So whether you see it or not, the thought is real, whether you see it in the physical or not, but the thought is real. So it's just your attention, where your attention is.
Yeah, and that attention really is that, because your attention is your focus, and that focus that you have, whatever it may be, that's your intent, so it's really important where you place your intent. And that's why I see that there's a big need for focus, on the is, because if you're not focused on the is, then, it's somewhere else with something that's a created thing, like how you're saying the thought forms is still something created. And so I see the big need for the real guidance and real education, because people don't know where their heavens are. People don't know where the gods are. They just look up and kind of around, and it's just that way.
Another, just on a personal level, my second wife, we met because I was wearing a cap. She was a preschool teacher when my two kids were going, and we had planned this on the real side before to meet. This is the way we're going to meet. It was a cue for her to see that cap and then get together with me. So that cap was actually triggered her remembrance of our agreement we made to meet. So there's all kinds of little subtle hints always going around here, and the real guides use these things too to give us, like, trigger our attention to focus on something or to remember something. And it's just a matter of paying attention all the time. It's really cool the way it is.
I want to comment on that because I get little, like, there's always little things happening, and I get that too. Like let's say I'll be walking down the street or doing whatever it is that I'm doing, and then I'll see, like, those little things, those little white things, they float through the air, and then, like, one of them will kind of float along with me while as I'm walking, and I kind of just take that as a little gift from life, letting him know that they're here, this is where I'm supposed to be, and all these other things are just sort of synchronicities that happen in my life. Or, like, even sometimes through my peripheral vision, I'm able to see certain things. So, like, something like that it's always on, so to speak.
Does Peter want to say anything more? Does he want to comment on any of this too?
Talking about symbols and things, one thing I did notice, and that was that one of the flashback scenes where they went into their bedroom, and over the bed they got a reproduction of Hieronymus Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights. I thought was sort of symbolic because it traces the fall of man, and they ended up in hell at the end. And I think that was a sort of a subtle sort of a symbol.
Yeah. They're really all over the place. You just kind of pick them out. The water, they met as kids in the end of the movie. The water represents, and the boats could represent, back to the psychic planes, the physical. There's just all kinds of stuff if you take the time. So that's why it's good to see. Yeah, thank you for your viewpoint. You pick things out. People can't see everything, so that's why we're together, to see how we can put this together and see a bigger picture for it.
Chris would go on to accept that he wasn't just the physical vehicle that he operates, as Albert would tell him how you didn't disappear, you just died. His awareness, that which animated the physical vehicle, endures, even as the body forms expire. Some individuals can be so attached to their physical vehicles that even on the body's death, their awareness may not depart the body, if they have considered or accept nothing beyond the physical body they have utilized, and there are circumstances where the awareness can remain with the rotting corpse for as long as until the individual decides differently. The part where Chris imposes himself through Annie, after he has transitioned, and through her, he has her writing words on paper of how he still exists. This looked very much like possession to me, like you also see with automatic writing, where another being takes control of a physical-based individual and uses their vehicle to convey messages and such. Those who do become possessed tend to be very open to such things. They are in agreement, in other words, and if it is an imposition, this is usually due to the individuals having aligned themselves with the possessing beings that allows this to take place. In regards to the usual body-possessing beings, which tend to be lower astral dwelling entities, alignment with the lower astral is achieved through such practices as black magic, the use of alcohol and drugs, etc.
Yeah, again, these people weren't educated as to that they're just they're using body vehicles. And that's what Paul Twitchell in the Spiritual Path Eckankar, the first thing he wanted to help people see that they're more than the body. So he developed this, the soul travel idea, so people could see that they're more than the body. So if Annie and Chris had known this, I mean, it'd be okay. You know, they wouldn't have to search for confirmation that the other one's okay, because they know everybody's okay. They're just in a different position. So this is where the literal education systems, the religious and spiritual systems, they really don't focus on the real true education and helping people to see what really, how life is and how things are in the process and how it works. So this movie kind of, in a way, agitates, you know, gives you that agitation feeling like, oh, the death is the final and we have to struggle to you know, regain our love and all this stuff. But it doesn't have to be that way. Everything's okay the way it is. And nobody ever leaves life. Life is always, we're always in life. Everybody is. So it's just, okay, you can have creative techniques where you can be together, like this, where Paul, in one of his books, he talked about this fellow who was in jail who visited his girlfriend every night in his dreams. You know, if Annie and Chris had prepared and say, well, wherever lose touch, we can visit each other in our dreams, or, you know, let's develop that. There are just so many ways in creation you can do things. You see it in the astral plane, how many opportunities and choices you have here. Here we're very limited, but still we can create and do things. It just takes the agreement of others here more. So go ahead, Jeremy, if you have anything.
Just like you were saying, that agreement, it's a very important part of everything that can come through and everything that can happen, because if you don't agree to it, then it's not going to take place. So you really have to look at the things that occur to you on the real side and these things like that. Like if you wanted to, I actually did an experiment like that. I knew this individual and I asked her, I said, well, you know, I can't go out tonight. I'm busy doing my thing, but I'll see you on the real side, you know, and she was open to the idea. Well, then there was that agreement. So it did take place. And I recalled the whole experience. She did not, but I shared it with her. I said, oh, it's fine. So it really is about the agreement, because then, you know, you'd be imposing on somebody's free will if there was no agreement.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, Kevin.
Then Chris finally lets go, releases attachment from his physical prior life, and fully onto the astral he then goes. As most will assume the astral as their next position, as their lack of awareness and recognition doesn't allow them to be positioned further. The individual with him, Albert, would tell Chris how he is making all of what he now is experiencing, and this surely is indeed the case. Our experience is always according to what we decide, and when we transition, it is according to what we have generally agreed to also, as to what and how we perceive the astral. If we have agreed to the notion of heavens, as an example, then we will be positioned in these designated heavenly areas. Illusionary realities is all they really are, however. And as Chris would be shown, the density of the physical level, the rigidity, has it that change is rather a laborious cause to effect affair, unless you directly manipulate through the psychic science abilities of the etheric vehicle. But beyond the physical, everything moves more so according to imagination, and instantaneous a change can be so, although many may not realize this on transition, and assume that they are as limited as they were on the physical rock worlds, and so for them that would be the case, as they have decided that to be so. Albert would also impress upon Chris that he is not his body or his brain, or anything of it, rather revealing that Chris is awareness, that the body vehicle and all that it comprises of is simply a vehicle for him to experience in creation through. Albert would go on to say, it's like you're in your house, meaning the personal self, and indeed the personal self is generally represented as a house on the real side, interestingly, but you're not your house. You're just the awareness that utilizes it as a vehicle. Albert would also say, physicality is the illusion, which indeed it is. Everything creational is the illusion, designed to recognize what is real from the comparison it provides. He did go on to say that thought is real, but really thoughts are as created as anything else. So ideally, he ought to have said, physicality is the illusion, awareness is real. And the part where Chris was reached through the painting by Annie, well, there is in reality no separation. We all are this awareness, and we can at any time or means connect with others, despite them not currently having a physical level lifetime.
In a way, the heaven that Chris ended up in is his own making. The fresh paint and all is just like he's the newbie there, so the paint was still fresh as he's running along. But yeah, it's our own making. Again, there's awareness that he wasn't seeing within himself, that's his own creation, plus there's more that he wasn't seeing. And it's very limited where he was. He just saw a bunch of people flying around and having a good time in their la-la land, but there's just so much more to this. But it does give a good representation of how you can create your own, position after the physical, and what you have to go through, change a little bit, change your attitudes, change your way of looking at things and your decisions and how you do things. Go ahead, Jeremy. Yeah, have anything?
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting in the beginning when the individual Albert, who was really his son, appeared to Robin Williams, that he was all blurry at first. And then Robin Williams did make a point to kind of ask him. He was like, well, why are you so blurry? Why can't I see you clearly? And then Albert, or who turned out to be his son, emphasized that you will when you decide to, that it's really a decided position to perceive or to see more. So I thought that's kind of cool. That's the way I looked at it.
Okay, Kevin?
When Annie committed suicide, she was rather wrapped up in the traumatic, emotionally charged ideas she had decided to apply to her decided experience. Generally, with suicides, the individual tends to automatically and immediately return back into another physical lifetime. Annie would seemingly find herself in hell. Generally, the lower astral is considered the position in life most resembling hell. As we decide and choose what we do, according to our decisions, dictates our positioning in life. We always effect experience that reflects the nature of the ideas we have created and agreed upon, be they our ideas or those of others. The more abrasive, awareness-restricting choices we make for ourselves and impose upon others affects experience and positioning in life that reflects these choices. As such, the most ill-intended, abrasive and restricting of other individuals will position themselves in the lower astral, and this is where they will find themselves on transition, in the company of the ill-intended reptilian controllers, vampires, entities, and demons, the other beings you'd expect to find in such a place. If an individual were to transition and cling on to extreme rage, depression, or fear, then they very likely would position themselves, that is, a reflected illusion of these decided upon emotions. For them, this might very well seem like then a hellish realm, and perhaps according to their agreements, they may well find themselves in the lower astral. People can look good on the surface, a little like Marjorie Klemp, but then on transition, the reptilians took her away, as she was in fact setting up all the Ekankar members to be tap-lined through the reptilians and Joni that she was actually working with. Who knows what agreements were rattling around in Annie's consciousness that may have facilitated such a position after transition. Also, we see the kind of twisted, distorted beings we might expect to find in the lower astral depicted in the movie. At one point, Albert proclaims how there are no rules, and again this is very real. The only rules or restrictions or authorities are those we decide and agree upon, and any idea we do agree with will represent cause and effect restriction.
I saw that Annie made the decision to get out of her muck, her attitude there, whereas Chris took the risk and did something that supposedly nobody's ever done before. So there's a subtle difference there. He was the risk taker, and she would just made the decision to change positions. And some of the movies, like we saw last week, Gattaca, with Vincent taking the risk to go beyond his predestined life as a secondary citizen, that was a risk too. So it really takes the risks to go beyond what has been planned out for you to see more, to become more aware. So I just see this movie here, in this movie that Chris did take the risk to see more than what he was, what you're supposed to. Nobody had gone into that area and brought somebody out. I'm not sure how that worked, but he did take the risk to do something that nobody in that area had ever done before. So he was a teacher to them too. He taught. He showed them that maybe they could do more than what they're destined there to do. in this case, go back to physical and be reincarnated again. Take your chances there. Well, but that's just old news. I mean, they've done that before. It's just they're just going to be replaying their life. They're going to have their ups and downs, and they're going to end up again in the same. Who knows? But what we're talking about here is just there's so much more to life than what we've been told, and to take the risk to go beyond what you've been educated to, indoctrinated to, is a big deal. But it's the only deal, really, for us to become more aware.
To comment on what you said about when he took the risk and he showed them that they could do more, it reminded me, I was thinking that it's like when you stand in a position where your focus is on the you're like the sun shining. You're demonstrating to others what's possible for themselves just by being that. You show them that, hey, there is more, right? So I thought that was kind of cool. Just wanted to add that little piece.
Yeah, that's all we're saying. There's more. That's all. It's not spiritual or anything. There's just more than what you've been told. But you got to figure it out. That that's why we're here. We help each other to figure it out, support each other. Is there more, Kevin? Or
I found the place where the trackers were to be found rather interesting, as it presented as a gigantic library, rather looking somewhat like how you would imagine the Akashic files to be. So suggesting they had visited the causal level, the life level where the Akashic records of all lifetimes lived are creationally stored, and there are individuals who are capable of reading and accessing the Akashic files. The reptilian controllers, and especially the life-level reptilian gods, certainly can and do. What better way to find someone than to peruse the Akashic records of them? An individual's created consciousness recorded, that through it you could rather predict where they might go or be positioned based on the construction of their consciousness as outlined in the Akashic records, as people are projecting their positioning in life and experience based on predetermined and decided routines of idea agreements overwhelmingly. To find where an individual is likely to be, one would surely need only to assess the likeliness of their position in life based on the created consciousness as revealed in the Akashic files. It was interesting that on finding Annie, she couldn't see through her decided illusion of grief and misery. She was unable to recognize Chris, as though her decided ideas were so all-encompassing that everything else from her previous physical life was being forgotten. And indeed, with the unconscious unaware, as they transition, they very quickly forget they were ever here. They quickly forget all they were involved with and with whom, then drift back to another physical lifetime, unconscious again, and oblivious of everything that had transpired prior to their new position. The tracker would also impress upon Chris how it was important to not be absorbed into Annie's illusion, lest it become his reality also. This would remind us of the importance of remaining indifferent and objective, to remain in the nowness of our real awareness, and not get caught up in the effects of creation, to not cling on to and incorporate any of the ideas that make up creation's construction, that we do not become the effects of them. For one idea is enough to have us remaining in creation, if we agree and cling to it. For to do so is us deciding to experience the effects of which we can only experience in the creational simulators. And an interesting part where Albert says in the movie, very often the body forms get in the way of who we really are. Again, very often, much by way of consideration of ideas is associated with the relationships we have with each other through the body vehicles, the father to son dynamics, etc., and we can lose recognition of the real awareness that we are, this being to being state with others, that can be overlaid with mind considerations that pertain to the body types and the roles we assume each lifetime. And finally, as is rather inevitable, despite Chris's success in liberating Annie from her decided position or not, and he does indeed do so, they would reincarnate again into another lifetime, and would meet as young children. For even if Annie hadn't been rescued by Chris, the emotional attachment is retained, and it's a given that they will feature in each other's experiences again at some point or other, as the emotional attachments we forge with others, agreement to the ideas that their personal selves represent, is an agreement that the personal self-idea of the individual must feature in our experience, and as it is a created idea, the only place such an experience can be had, that of the personal self of another, is in creation. And so, our cause and effect karma is entwined in those we forge these attachment agreements with, and we will continue to feature in each other's creational experience, and indeed continue to be resigned to creation, until we let all agreements and attachments to all these cause and effect generating ideas go. Then we can recognize each other as beings of a free light beyond the cause and effect of the created body forms and the ideas of creation.
Yeah, it's a good point that no matter what they did, it's still cause and effect is in play here. So they would have been brought back together through their attachments. I see his willingness to get caught up in her illusion. That's interesting, because his sincerity to go all the way, to give it 100%, no matter if it destroys him, that's like the invisible part of that is where the is in a way. He never recognized it, but his willingness, and we have to be willing to see this 100%, this reality. So he did go for it, no matter what it meant to him, to his personal self. But see, the experience was there, but he didn't recognize it. He could have, through that experience, recognized something. Life would have shown him something, but no, he just got caught up in cause and effect again, was reincarnated again. I had an experience too where I was in Ekankar. This is the spiritual path I was in for 40 years. My partner at the time was not interested in Ekankar. So in a way, I had to make the choice of whether I'm going to go with the relationship or go with Ekankar. And I chose the relationship. At that time, I thought the love, the love that we had, or I had, I had, was more important. So I chose that. I left the path. Actually, I put all the books of Ekankar in my pickup truck. I had a lot of books. I went to the dump. I backed up into the dump. I threw them all in the garbage in the dump because I thought somehow in my mind there was like a either one or the other. They didn't match somehow. So I went with the love part, the relationship. But after 6 months, the relationship fell apart. But at least I had the experience of, I made the choice and I saw through it. And then I was able to get back into Ekankar and go another 10, 20 years with that. But that's, we have these tough decisions sometimes. And no matter what we choose, I'd say choose 100%, just if you're going to throw yourself into something, throw it in, go all the way, because then you can only see it that way. There's a lot of people that are in the new presentation, not a lot, but some that are on the fence, so to speak, and you're not going to see it that way. Your foot's on this side and the other foot's on that side. It's not going to work. You're nowhere. You got to throw yourself into this. Because life is already perfect and it's already full. So how can you see life to its fullest if you're just part way into it? You can't do it with the awareness. So give it to Jeremy there.
It's a lot to consider there with a lot that was said, but it's interesting what you said that, I knew this female that I was interacting with, and she didn't like the new you. She was like, well, it takes so much of your attention. You're so focused. And I'm just like, well, it's something very real to me, and then it's not like this or that. It's just is. And, you could test it out and see. And she kind of hit me with an ultimatum of like, it's me or that, or it's this or that, and I was like, I can't put this aside for somebody else because I have my own life to live. So it's interesting because you really have to deal with these things and the attitudes that people have, because it's it's always around. Even though you're becoming more aware, you're still in creation, so you got to deal with the created things of others.
Yeah, I see it as very, very hard to get somebody that's to the being to being level where you're in a relationship, especially where you're both focused on the is and nothing in between. There's always something going on with the drama and all that. So here and Dwayne talks about relationships almost like it's, they're very challenging for one thing, you have them. We see Dwayne and Ava and how they are, and you don't see everything that's going on, but there's challenges there too, because they're in the personal self here. But on the real side, it's different. But it's really, relationships are interesting, and your really relationship is with the is. It sounds kind of like, oh, it's not as warm and fuzzy as like with the personal self, but it can be. I mean, there's so much to it. Dwayne talks about the love affair you have. It has to be a love affair with this reality. Really, that's your love affair. And if you can get somebody to stand beside you with that, then go with that and agree to what you're doing. That's cool. We're not negating any personal relationships, but it's being to being, and that's even hard to explain what that is, but there's nothing in between. Everybody has their freedom to do what they want, and it's not like an open relationship. It's more than that. It's just people have their own path, and that's it. And then you stand by and support each other. And if you can find somebody, good luck to do that with.
Yes, and especially in creation, a lot of it, because it's created, it requires maintenance. So it really comes down to, well, you want to do the maintenance or not,
Exactly. Yeah. You got to deal with it then. If you want the relationship, you got to deal with it. Yes. How much you do. At first, yeah, it's all cute, the little idiosyncrasies and all that. But then later on, yeah. So it's what it is. Okay, Kevin. Got any more? You want to wrap it up somehow, or got any more last words?
I was just going to say, I mean, how do you feature in somebody else's experience? The only way you can is to decide on the same things that they are. So if you have a relationship with somebody who is very personal, self and creationally based, the only way you're going to retain an experience with them is if you also limit yourself accordingly and decide on the same limiting things and ideas that allow you to be in their shared experience. And so that is why if you have relationships and people will only go so far, you really have to let them go when you're not doing them any favours by remaining, because they're going to remain unconscious and one-dimensional anyway. All you are doing is simply retarding your own progress. And so, as Dwayne said, it came to a point where he had to leave his family behind because they would only go so far, and he wanted to go further, recognise the is and present the new presentation and bring the new wave into creation. And so I would just finish up with that, I would say.
That's a great place to finish. Thank you. Okay, so today we went over what dreams may come with Robin Williams. And we'll see you next week on Real to Real Wake Up with Dreamscape, the movie Dreamscape. Let's talk about that. It's how people can enter into others' dreams. And we touched on that today, but we'll really go into it next time. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks, Kevin and Jeremy. See you next time. Let's finish with the new you and show people what they can do to become more aware. So this is something you can do just before bed, and life will show you more. New you. Kevin?
New you.
Jeremy?
New you.
Thanks, y'all.
Greg, Peter having a new you song as
Oh,
well.
Peter.
I'll put him in the chair.
Okay. Peter, you're hiding. You're hiding again.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's me.
You.
Thanks, Peter, for your input. Yeah, come back. Thank you.
Thanks.